Hello everyone, this is G and I'm back with the second video of What If I Made the New Warriors. So this is going to be a series where I take the new Warriors, uh, Trailblazer, Screentime, B Negative, and then the Incest Twins, Safe Space, and Snowflake, and I reimagine them and I see what I would do with them, how I would approach them. So the first video was on Trailblazer. That one's up if you haven't seen it. Please take a look and leave a comment if you like and let me know what you like or didn't like about it. But the second one is going to be about screen time. So, according to the official Marvel article introducing the characters, screen time is a meme-obsessed super teen whose brain became connected to the internet after becoming exposed to his grandfather's experimental internet gas. Now, he can see augmented reality and real-time maps and can instantly Google any fact. Does this make him effectively a genius? He sure acts like it does. I wanted to have teen characters who felt as now as the New Warriors did in 1990, explains Kibblesmith. The New Warriors have been Zeitgeist characters from the beginning. You get edgy skateboarding Night Thrasher in the 90s and the reality TV team in the 2000s. And now in 2020, we have New Warriors who have never grown up without the internet, and one character appears to essentially live inside it. The word screen time is only ever used in a sort of restrictive sense, and because we're doing a story about teenage rebels, excuse me, a lot of the names are about teens fighting against labels that are put on them. So with screen time, we like that idea that he has infinite screen time. Okay, so that's the synopsis of the character according to artist Luciano Vecchio, I think it's Vecchio, and writer Daniel Kibblesmith. So what's going to be following would be my version, my take on the character. So my version of screen time would have the name Ichiro Inoue. Ichiro because, well, Ichiro Suzuki. I didn't watch a lot of baseball. I don't watch a lot of baseball, but the few times I would see Ichiro, I was definitely watching. I think he's a great athlete. So it would be because of that, but also because if his name is Ichiro, then naturally his nickname can be Ichi. And in Japanese, to my understanding, if I were to take this seriously, I'd have to do more research. But to my understanding, in Japanese, Ichi is one, right? Numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4. Ichi or each, I've heard it said both ways, is number one, right? So, emphasizing the fact that the kid is very lonely, I think Ichi is a interesting nickname, right? That again hints to the sense of isolation and being alone. That would be a theme with this character, without directly saying it. And then of course the name Ichiro Inoue is the I, and that's of course throwing back to Marvel's naming conventions, right? Peter Parker, Scott Summers, so on and so forth. So the look, right? So currently, Screen Time, as many people have mentioned, kind of has a Ben 10 vibe about him. I'll just take people's word on that because I never watched Ben 10. But you can see that with the exception of the visor, his look is pretty, I would say, plain. Again, I said in the video, I think the first video I made about the New Warriors, that his look is just very Tron-like, very futuristic for like 1980, but not today. So what I decided to do was I did a little research. I was like, okay, he's internet obsessed, he's meme obsessed. Well, internet, E-kid, right? So I looked up some stuff on the e-boy and the e-girl aesthetic, and it seems to be this mix between 90s grunge and the emo look, And then looks like it has some anime influences in there. Then of course K-pop is really popular now, and a lot of K-pop is very bright with the colors and the hair. So what I did was, okay, what style, right, is sort of embodied or kind of meshed and put together best? Like what uh, uh, celebrity could I look at and go, okay, this is a look, this works. And what I did was I chose Bill Kraltz, or however you say his last name, Billy, from Tokyo Hotel. In particular, back in what, the mid 2000s, right, when they were like a really big uh, international hit. Right, so I love the shock of hair, the rock and roll look. I think it would be a good look for screen time. It would definitely stand out because his hairstyle, as it stands in the original sketch, is just like, spiky black hair. I want this to be big and bright and noticeable. So Bill Kraltz would, I would be basically, you're gonna see as I go on, I'm basically going with Bill Kraltz as close as I can get without being sued. So there's the inspiration for the look here, right? Bill, the body, again, Bill Kraltz, but in particular, what I want with screen time is a very slim, not muscular, very lithe look, because again, he's not an action guy, at least not at first, right? He isn't really a fighter. His story has nothing to do with physicality or combat, so I think him being slim, especially given that he has this, wild rocker look about him. So he would be very slim. He wouldn't be wearing sleeves like Bill is here. And I would totally keep the pants, just that there would be holes in the pants. Because for some odd reason, I don't know why, but the whole torn jeans look is back in after like 30 years. I don't know why, but it is. So to be at least somewhat modern, I would definitely tear up the pants, but like just this general lankiness, I think I would go with. And I think the character would probably be maybe about 5'6", 5'7" in height, like kind of like average height, maybe a little under. So there's that. Now the style, again, Bill Kraltz, right? So basically, it would be Bill Kraltz, but you tone down some of the rock and roll elements, and you add a lot of color for the K-pop reference. So something like this. So there's that. And now here's probably the biggest part is the story, because that original story of breathe in granddad's internet gas is, oh god, that is one of the stupidest things I have ever heard in life. So anyway, here's the way I would tell screen time story, Ichiro's story. So it'd basically be a fairly dark take on Richie Rich. So what do I mean by this? Well, Ichiro's parents are what I would call millennial millionaires, right? And they right, they work for a big tech company, and they invent technology for the company. And several years ago, right, they finally made the one item, right, and they hit the jackpot, right. This be probably about 3 years earlier. I'd probably make him around 17, no, 17, right. So his this sort of backstory would be happening, especially when his parents finally hit it big, would probably be around when he was 14, right? So here's the thing, right? So his parents finally make it big and they're rich and everything. But his parents are always working. And his parents aren't bad people, but they're just so career driven, and they're so concerned about providing him with everything he wants and providing him with this very high standard of living that they're very inattentive. They don't mean to be inattentive. They're sort of like, in how do I put it? They're just they're just a bit clueless. they just don't think that they need necessarily to be there to like emotionally nurture in a sense. And again, I don't think that they're trying to emotionally neglect him, but they are. They just don't quite realize it until everything falls apart. So what I could see is that he'd have this very entitled, abrasive personality that he knows doesn't really work with people, but he's been raised in this very isolated situation, right? He comes from a rich family, so the few people he does interact with are going to be people who do stuff for him or who are paid by his parents. So most of the people he encounters in his day-to-day life are more kind of like glorified servants, right? Than they are really people, let alone his friends. And despite his bad attitude and his loud fashion, what he really wants is not just attention. He certainly wants attention, but he also wants a connection, which is why he's always online, always on the internet. Because on the internet, he doesn't have to show his face. He can create a persona, and he can sort of express himself in a way that he can't do in the real world. Because again, it's a question of if he tries to get to know anybody, right? Are they interested in him or in his family's money? Are they using him? So there's actually a bit of pathos behind this character. And in real life, he's very abrasive, but he doesn't mean to be. He's just not very good at interacting with people his age because he's very rarely around people his age in the real world. So there's that. So what happens is that his parents, right, are working. They're working on this new high-tech visor, right? And they're working on it, and they've done tests on it, and they find that it works just fine on adults. But they haven't really been able to test it on teenagers yet. So they have this workshop, right? They live in this big house, this big mansion, and so they have a workshop, right? Kind of like their own personal bat cave, where they get to work on this visor, right? So, Screentime, Ichiro watches his parents closely, right? He argues with them and he fights with them, but of course that's really because he wants their attention, right? But he knows that this visor is down there. And they tell him, look, don't touch the visor, right? Don't touch the visor. We're still working on it. It's still very experimental. We know that it works on adults just fine, but we don't know how it affects younger people. Don't touch it, right? So naturally, because he's angry and upset and he views this as his parents again trying to push him away, what happens is one night his parents go out for a meeting of some sort. So as a lonely teenager may do, he gets drunk, and he decides he's going to defy his parents and try on the visor. His original idea is that he's just going to try on the visor, check it out, test it, see what it does, check out websites that he probably shouldn't be looking at because he's a teenager, and then break it, right? His idea is, if you're going to ignore me for this thing, I'm going to use it, and then I'm going to trash it. So what do you care, right? Care more about this thing than you do me. So that's sort of his mindset going into this. So he gets drunk, he stumbles into his parents' Batcave-esque workshop, and he decides to try on the visor. The visor's working just fine. He plays with it for about an hour or two. But then, when he goes... when he goes to turn it off, when he goes to turn off the visor, he finds that he can't. When he tries to lift it off of his head, right? When he tries to take it off, he realizes that he can't. every time he tries to take it off, he gets like a painful electric zap by the nodes stuck to his temples, right? So he figures, okay, I for some reason, every time I try to physically remove it, it won't come off. So he tries another way. He tries to shut down the program, but then that doesn't work. That doesn't work. So what happens is that when he tries to shut it down, he can feel his mind begin to shut down. He doesn't quite know what the feeling is, but what happens is that, as he will find out, whenever he tries to not log off, he can log off, but whenever he tries to shut the visor off, right, what's happening is that it's causing him to go brain dead, right, and that's what he's feeling. He just doesn't realize it yet. So he tries it several times, but as it slowly shuts down, he feels he literally feels himself going brain dead, and it scares him. So he lets it boot back up. So eventually, his parents come home, and he tells them what he did. They take him to the hospital, thinking that is just the rantings of a drunk kid, and then they realize no. Every time he does try to take it off or turn it off, it actually is severely hurting him, and in particular messing with his brain, that he really is entering brain damage and brain death every time he tries to turn it off, right? So he can log out, but he can never leave. Kind of reminds me of a song by the Eagles back in the day. But anyhow, what his parents do after this is that they take him to the best neurologist they can find to try to figure out what's happened. They take him to the best tech people who work with this type of technology to try to take it off of him without hurting him, but they can't do it. And what they eventually realize is that his brain has essentially been downloaded in a sense. Right? His consciousness has been downloaded into the internet somehow. They're not quite sure how that happened, but that's pretty much what's happened. Right? Now the upside to this is that, similar to what the original description said, right? He has access to all this information. It's instantaneous. He can't just Google. He pretty much is Google, right? He has all this information at his fingertips, right? So he could be one of, if not the smartest men or people in the world. The downside to all this is that he can't take it off, because if he tries to take it off, it's going to kill him. And if the item ever breaks, again, it's a loss of conscious. If it breaks and they haven't been able to restore his consciousness back to his own mind, he'll die. If it runs out of battery power, he'll die. If he loses consciousness, right, falls into a deep sleep or otherwise is unconscious, he'll become brain dead, right? So they have to try to figure out a way to get his consciousness back into his brain, so he's normal again, and 2, get this damned visor off him and destroy his prototype and everything behind it, so that no one else can ever get their hands on this. And how would I put it? I would say this. Because all of this, right, him sort of getting drunk and putting on this visor and everything, probably happened about 2 years prior to the main story. So he was 15 then, he's 17 now. And in that time, he's been living with this visor 24/7, right? He can't go to sleep. He can't, right? He's just constantly bombarded with all of this information, and honestly, it's starting to drive him mad, right? He's starting to really lose his sanity, question his sanity because he can't disengage. He can't turn it off, right? He tries, if it breaks, he's dead. He tries to turn it off, he's dead. He tries to fall asleep, lose consciousness, he's dead. The closest he can get to sleep is to lightly doze off, which of course is similar to like when your computer sleeps, the screen turns black but doesn't actually go off. So that's the closest that he gets, a cat nap. And he has to wake up several times a night to make sure that he doesn't actually truly fall asleep. So this poor boy's going crazy, basically, which has made him, one, a caffeine addict, and two, it's actually made him quite desperate in his situation and quite reckless. Now, while I don't think that he would risk another person's health, he would certainly risk his own, right? He wants out of this so bad that he would do nearly anything, he'd believe nearly anyone, if they could provide a way to get out of this situation, right? Because he's just so desperate to finally be normal again, right? What other people may view as this, great gift, he views as a curse because he's been living with the side effects of it for the past 2 years, right? Everybody else who may think, "Oh my God, you are the internet. This is so awesome!" Right? They're not the ones losing sleep and therefore losing their minds. So that's the way I would approach it, right? He would be reckless, staying up late. Well, he can't sleep at all, really. But constantly working on ways to try to get this visor off of his head so he could be normal again. So he would probably be their, like, I would say oracle in a sense. Not that he's paralyzed, but he would be more of the information broker, the information guy. He really wouldn't be Mr. Action, Action, Action because he's half crazy. And because he really isn't part of it to like fight. So what happens is that his parents would somehow eventually get in contact with the new Warriors, and his parents would basically give them a lot of money to help him with this. It's like name your price, we will pay any price, just help our son and get him back to normal. And the new Warriors say, "You know what? This isn't exactly our field, but we'll try." But, in, I guess, compensation or like recompense, right? He has to help us. He has to be our tech guy. And they're like, "Okay, fine. He won't be in danger. He won't be part of the battles a lot. He already is technology personified, basically, so okay, right? He can just stay behind and feed them info." So that would sort of be his role in everything. And when he's not feeding them info, he's trying to figure out how to get this damn visor off his head. Because the boy needs a nap. Because we all know that when young teenage boys don't get their sleep, they go crazy. So anyway, that's the video. That is what I would do with Screentime, right? Ichiro Inoue, this sort of, tragic character. Probably much more tragic than what Mr. Kittlesmith originally intended, but that's my take on it. That's how I see it. I know a few people in the comments said that they really liked what I originally did with him. So that's so this is like sort of expounding upon that. So I hope you guys enjoy this. So next up is gonna be B negative, the vampire boy, and then after that, it's the incest twins of Safe Space and Snowflake. So I will see you all in the next one. Have a good day and have a good night. Be safe. Stay quarantined. I guess it seems like the whole world is on quarantine. But anyway, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.